Today is Election Day, and you still have a few more hours to cast your ballot. Polls are open until 9 o'clock. And police are searching for a man accused of breaking into a Newmarket retirement home 6 times. Well, changes are coming to this year's Pride celebration amid rising costs and sponsorship uncertainty. We'll have the details just ahead. Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman, his wife, and their dog have been found dead in their New Mexico home. More on this straight ahead. This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage. It is decision day for voters as Ontarians head to the polls. It's been an unusual campaign with candidates battling frigid temperatures. This is while canvassing in the first winter election since 1981. The PC leader Doug Ford called the snap $189 million election, saying that he needs a new mandate to deal with 4 years of U.S. President Donald Trump. The other 3 main party leaders say that this election was unnecessary because Ford already had a large majority government with well over a year left in its mandate. And our reporters are out in the field to bring you in-depth coverage of this rare winter election in Ontario. So let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. She's at the Toronto Congress Centre, where PC leader Doug Ford will host an election night event. Beatrice.
Bakari, Doug Ford is no stranger to the Toronto Congress Centre. It's where he celebrated his last 2 majority wins. He's hoping to do the same here tonight. Right now, the room here empty, nothing but media. But in just several hours, it will certainly be full of PC supporters who are hopeful that Doug Ford will earn his 3rd consecutive majority. That's something that's not an easy or frequent task here in the province of Ontario. Earlier today, Doug Ford was out with his wife, Carla, a rare winter election day, snowbanks all around him. But he walked up to his former elementary school, where now decades after attending that school, he cast his ballot, marking an X, obviously voting for himself, thanking the people of Ontario for their support, and reiterating the fact that he says he needs another strong mandate to lead this province well after Donald Trump's presidency is over. And he says he needs to do so to protect Ontario jobs, to shield this province in the midst of this looming threat of 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports. Doug Ford also reflecting on the fact that he was back at his former elementary school. And here's what he had to say.
I find it very ironic. I'm coming here. I went to grade 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you would have told me 50 years ago that I'd be coming in here to vote, boy, you wouldn't have ever thought of it.
And so now the leaders of all the parties, Bakari, they've done everything they can do. People across this province casting their ballots, waiting in lines. As you and I speak, they can do so until 9 o'clock tonight. When the legislature was dissolved, when Doug Ford, then premier, went to see the lieutenant governor back on January 28th, asking for her to dissolve the legislature. There's 124 ridings across this province. Doug Ford and the PCs in the last election, they won 83. They held 79 at the time of dissolution at Queen's Park. And so Doug Ford asking Ontarians for a stronger mandate to give him and his party essentially the backing to spend tens of billions of dollars he says he needs to spend in the face of these looming tariffs. So again, polls close at 9. Doug Ford and his family will be watching at a hotel close by to the Toronto Congress Centre. We'll have live footage from that as he's watching the results come in just after 9 o'clock. And then again, this room will just be packed with PC supporters who hope to be celebrating a PC victory tonight. So that's what's happening here at PC headquarters. Let's go out to Mississauga now. That's where Bonnie Crombie is fighting for her seat in the legislature. She did not have one at dissolution, but she's looking to pick up her riding at Mississauga East Cooksville, and she'll also be tonight celebrating or watching the results come in with supporters over at the Convention Centre in Mississauga. Our Lindsay Biscaya is live at a polling station in the riding of Mississauga East Cooksville tonight. So how's it looking out there, Linz?
Hey, B, yeah, that's right. We are at this polling station. No lines at this point, but people have been trickling in, trickling out. This was, I think, the concern also was voter turnout. Of course, the last provincial election, we saw a historic low when it came to voter turnout. Advance polls didn't see very good numbers. So, you know, an election in the middle of February, a snap election. Not sure what voter turnout is going to look like, but I mean, people are still filing in through these doors. As Beatrice mentioned, this is going to be a really interesting riding. That's because the leader of the Liberal Party, Bonnie Crombie, will be looking for a seat tonight here in Mississauga, East Cooksville. She is, of course, still somewhat new to voters in Ontario. We do have some B-roll, some visuals here of her. She voted in advance polls, but she was helping her mother vote today. So that's what you're looking at. But I mean, a lot of people still unfamiliar with Bonnie Crombie. And what's really interesting about this riding is the fact that the PC Conservative candidate is Sylvia Gualteri. So a lot of people maybe not familiar, but if you are in Mississauga or if you are familiar with the PC party, you might know Gualteri. She is the mother-in-law of Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown. She is the sister of Rudy Cozzetto, who is the former sitting member of Parliament for Mississauga Lakeshore. He, of course, is running for re-election tonight as well. So very deep ties to the Tory party. And obviously the PCs felt that Sylvia Gualteri had a very good chance of winning this election here, winning a seat in Mississauga, East Cooksville, and ensuring that Bonnie Crombie did not win a seat and therefore will not be in the legislature. So it's going to be really interesting to watch what happens here tonight in this riding. Of course, Bonnie Crombie, she will be at the Mississauga Convention Centre to watch these votes come in. Last election, all 6 ridings in Mississauga were swept by the PCs. So obviously the goal here tonight for Bonnie Crombie is not only to win her seat and make sure that that doesn't happen again, she's also looking for the Liberals to regain official party status. They haven't had that in the last 2 elections. So they would need at least 12 seats to win official party status at this point. When dissolution happened, they were sitting with 9 seats. So a lot is really riding on Bonnie Crombie, on the Liberals, and in this riding of Mississauga, East Cooksville. And we will be watching all of that happen throughout the evening tonight as we watch results come in. Back to you, Bakari.
CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. Thanks, Lindsay. Well, Ontario NDP leader Mart Sowles held a rally at a campaign office on Danforth Avenue this morning. She was joined by Beach's East York NDP candidate, Kate Dupuis, who's hoping to take the riding from Liberal incumbent Mary Margaret McMahon. Sowles encouraged people to get out and vote.
Today, you can use the power of your vote to choose a better Ontario. You can use your vote to choose an Ontario where we are going to hire doctors, where you can have an affordable home, where you can pay for your groceries and not break the bank.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner cast his ballot at Guelph City Hall today. He was joined by his family, including his daughter, who was voting for the first time. Schreiner has been the MPP for Guelph since 2018 and was the first Green MPP elected in Ontario. And you still have a few more hours to cast your ballot as polls are set to close at 9 o'clock. And for more on this, let's go live to CP24's Arda Zakarian. Arda.
Yes, Bakari, I was at a polling station earlier, and if you remember earlier this morning, it seems like a lifetime ago, but when we woke up, we saw snowy conditions outside. It was like a snow globe. We thought, this is election day. How are people going to get to the votes? Well, voting stations. Well, it was actually, when I was there, fairly good. Everything was clear. The roads were okay. The sidewalks, it was all nice and accessible for people to go out and vote. Some people even told me that it's like a spring day today. Of course, we did get above freezing temperatures and the sun was shining, so that really did help. However, being winter, it's always difficult to get out and vote. But we did have a couple of people who did speak to me and said that they were determined to go out and vote today.
No matter what the weather is, I'm always going to vote. That's what our right is. It's the only chance that we have to have a voice. And I think it's super important for everybody to vote. We have to have our say.
Never miss a vote. Exercise my franchise. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? People are too lazy to vote. That's most of the reasons why they don't. My children vote, and you get what you vote for.
That man right there, he says he's 86 years old. He shoveled his driveway and then went out to vote, which is pretty amazing. I mean, if he can do it, then none of us have an excuse. So normally, though, elections aren't called in the winter. Last time it was in the spring of 2022, and we had 43.5% voter turnout, which is really low. It's actually a record low. So what is it going to be like this time? Well, we'll have to wait and see until the polls close and we have that information. But it doesn't look too good, being as last time it was spring and this time, old man winter. Back to you.
All right, reporting live from the newsroom, CP24's Arda Zakaria. Thanks a lot. A Nanos research poll released last night for CTV News and CP24 shows the Ontario PCs continue to maintain their lead over the Liberals. The Progressive Conservatives have 47.8% support, while the Liberals dropped nearly 3% to 26.2%. The Ontario NDP is next with 15.4%, and the Green Party has 6.4% support. Nearly 9% of voters polled were undecided as of yesterday.
There hasn't been much of a shift in the support for the Conservatives and the New Democrats. What we have seen in the last couple of days, at least, is a little bit of a shift between the Liberals and the Greens. So, that's been a little bit, but, the reality is that throughout this whole election, the Progressive Conservatives, led by Doug Ford, have had a pretty comfortable advantage, and they've continued. The Liberals have come in second in terms of popular support. The big question is how will these numbers convert into seats?
And when it comes to which leader they want to be premier, just over 44% said Doug Ford. Just over 22% chose Bonnie Crombie, and 14.1% picked Marit Stiles. Mike Schreiner has nearly 8% support. Well, it's 5:11. Let's check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Lisa Morales. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Bakari. It's really been a little bit of a tough one. The weather and road conditions have made things a little complex as well. We've also dealt with an ongoing fatal rollover investigation on the East 407. All lanes closed from Leslie to Warden. I am just getting word from crews. They have reopened the ramps. They are reopening at least northbound, and this is southbound, so this should be opening momentarily to the East 407 based on what I'm hearing from 407 crews. And that means hopefully the Leslie and Woodbine ramps will reopen as well. Stay with us. I'll bring you the latest as I get it myself. This is the South 410, really busy out of Brampton. There was a collision tying up a couple center lanes just south of Clark, just cleared out of the way. New problems if you're planning travels towards Burlington. Collision QEW Niagara bound just past Appleby line. They were in the left through lane. They just moved to the shoulder. Obviously slowdowns on approach. Let's have a peek at the North Don Valley Parkway. It's definitely a slow trek in sections as you make your way towards Don Mills, pretty much up towards the 401. 401 pretty busy both ways as well, right across the GTA and off the major routes. Eastbound Finch is still blocked at Bayview. That was a much earlier collision. Send it back to you, Bakari.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
It's 5:12, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5. Coming up, police are searching for a man after a series of break-ins at a retirement building in Newmarket. Police are searching for a man accused of 6 break-and-enters in a Newmarket retirement home. 26-year-old is accused of disguising himself as a personal support worker to break into a retirement residence in the area of Davis Drive and Roxborough Road in Newmarket. York Regional Police say that the suspect fled after being confronted by staff and dropped a gold watch that he took from a resident's room. Rodriguez is currently on bail for similar offenses and was not to be within 50 meters of any retirement home in Ontario. And for more on this, let's bring in CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan. Okay, Steve, first off, let's talk about the suspect, Druven Rodriguez. What do we know about him, and where is he?
Well, great question. So he's obviously AWOL right now, if you will, and the police are trying to locate him. So the police have arrest warrants for his arrest. They've gone to the court, swore out an information saying that they believe on reasonable grounds that this person has committed 6 break-and-enters. And those break-and-enters are by deception, not by force. He's bluffed his way into this retirement home by pretending to be a personal support worker. So there is an arrest warrant for him. It's just a matter of time now before they locate him. And he's also going to be charged with failing to comply with an undertaking because he was released on a bail, as you said, with conditions not to be near a retirement home or within 50 meters of a retirement home, and clearly he breached that.
All right, Steve, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, 6 time. So there could be other instances that we don't know about.
Yeah, there very well could be other instances. So once his picture gets blasted across the GTA, other retirement homes, senior homes may have a look at this picture and recognize him as being somebody perhaps was in their institution or their building as well. So these are 6 break-in enters that we know of, and there was past break-in enters that we know the police have laid charges for because he was on an undertaking not to be around the retirement home.
What does this say to you about this suspect?
Well, it's a special type of person that not only breaks into a retirement home, but preys on our most vulnerable and steals their belongings. So with a person like this, it doesn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if, in fact, we learn there's more victims because of just the manner, the deception, the breach of trust that this person alleged to have committed.
What can you tell us about the MO from what we've heard so far?
So the MO seems to be pretty basic, and that is that he approaches a senior's home and pretends to be a PSW. Now, it does call into question those that are allowing him into these retirement homes. Do they not look for identification? And perhaps that's something they might want to do, because just saying you're a PSW shouldn't get you access to all of these people who are very vulnerable.
Yeah, brings up questions of safety and security, especially for those of us who have loved ones in retirement homes.
Yeah, that's right. So this may now cause a lot of these retirement homes to ask for identification or some sort of authentication that you are, in fact, a PSW, because just to say, I am a PSW, allow me in, shouldn't be enough to let somebody have access to people who are very vulnerable in our society.
Let's talk about the victims here.
Well, the victims are old people. They're seniors, and they're vulnerable. They rely on the assistance of younger people to take care of them, and they are the ones that we need to take care of in society, not rip them off. So by going into a retirement home, going into a older person's unit, into the room, and stealing from them, I mean, it gets no worse than that.
Okay, and then we have, the employees who, seemingly did the right thing to step up and, chase this guy away, but it could have turned out a lot worse.
It sure could have. And anytime you confront somebody who's committing a crime, you don't know what the reaction is going to be. So yes, there was some keen-eyed people at that retirement home that recognized that, hey, this guy is not who he says he is. There was a bit of a chase. He dropped the watch, and now it's in the hands of the police.
All right, CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan. Thanks, Steve.
You got it.
And a man has died after a stabbing in the city's West End. So this happened around 2:30 last Friday morning. This is on Dover Court Road and Geary Avenue, north of DuPont. Police say that a man in his 30s, he was stabbed. Emergency crews, they did perform life-saving measures on him. He was rushed to a trauma center. Today, we learned he died Monday. And police have released an image of the victim, identified as 38-year-old Paolo Mota of Toronto. There's no word on any suspects. And this is Toronto's 4th homicide of 2025. And a man's injured in a shooting in the West End is now facing charges. So police were called to the area of Weston and Lawrence just before 6 last evening. Paramedics say that a man in his 20s was rushed to hospital. He had been shot multiple times. His injuries are described as serious but non-life-threatening. And police say that he is facing several gun charges. They're still looking for a suspect in connection with the shooting. And this year's Pride celebration, it may look a little bit different amid rising costs and uncertainty with corporate sponsors. Pride Toronto says that it's made the decision to cancel the stage at Dundas and Church Streets, and they're pausing a 2-day mini festival on the Toronto Islands. They're also focusing on featuring more local artists instead of international headliners. The group's executive director says that 3 major corporate sponsors are reducing their contributions, potentially pulling out of the festival entirely, citing a shift in priorities. That expected shortfall, it amounts to roughly $300,000. Pride runs from June 26th through the 30th. It's 5:19. This is Live at 5. And coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump says that he intends to put 25% tariffs on imports from Canada starting next week. U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed today that the 25% tariffs against Canada will take effect next week as scheduled. Trump continued his calls for Canada to improve its border security, saying drugs are coming into the U.S. at a very high and unacceptable level, with the majority of them being fentanyl. The U.S. president says, as a result, the proposed tariffs on most Canadian goods will take effect March 4th. China will also be charged an additional 10% tariff on that date. A second tariff date remains on track to begin April 2nd.
Because they should be apprehending much more. They're only apprehending 1%. You're right about that. It's a little more than that. But they should be apprehending much more because a lot comes through Canada. And as Mexico gets stronger in terms of the border, it goes up to Canada. And a lot of drugs are coming in through Canada. We can't have that.
And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau provided an update on Canada's response to Donald Trump's tariff threats during a news conference in Montreal today.
This is an issue that we should be working together on, and that Canada is not the source of problems for the United States. We will continue to do that work and do everything necessary to avoid these tariffs coming in. But like I said, if on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
The tariff threat is impacting how Canadians feel about their financial well-being. A new survey commissioned by H&R Block Canada finds that overall, 92% of Canadians are concerned that the tariffs will further increase their cost of living, and 81% worry they'll directly impact their finances. More than 8 in 10 say their income is not keeping pace with the cost of living, and 78% plan to cut back on spending as a result. Well, 42% are concerned about their ability to pay debts such as credit cards, loans, and mortgage payments. The poll finds Canadians spend most of their money on day-to-day essentials, rent and mortgage and loan payments. Well, it's 5:23, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5. Oscar winner Gene Hackman and his wife have been found dead at their home in New Mexico. The latest on the investigation, just ahead. An investigation by Israel's military has determined that it misjudged Hamas's intentions and underestimated its capabilities leading up to the October 7th attack. The findings released today could pressure Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to launch a broader inquiry to examine the political decision-making that preceded the attack, which triggered the war in Gaza. Many Israelis believe the failures of October 7th extend beyond the military and blame Netanyahu for what they view as a failed deterrence and containment strategy in the years leading up to the attack. The prime minister has not taken responsibility, saying that he'll answer tough questions only after the war. An investigation is underway after Oscar winner Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead in their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And film critic Richard Krause joined us earlier to speak about the legacy of Gene Hackman.
I think his versatility. Here's an actor who could play Popeye Doyle, for instance, in the French Connection film, gritty, hard-boiled New York cop, and, sort of a coiled spring ready to explode at any second. And he could play Lex Luthor in Superman, a broadly comedic role. He was someone who was able to play those two characters and every extreme in between and make it look effortless.
Gene Hackman was 95 years old, and his wife, Betsy, was 63. Right now, it's 5:27, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5. Ontarians are heading to the polls to decide who will lead the province for the next 4 years amid an unprecedented time in politics. We continue our election coverage after the break. Today's election day. You still have a few more hours to cast your ballot. Polls are open until 9. And police are searching for a man accused of breaking into a Newmarket retirement home 6 times. Well, changes are coming to this year's Pride celebration amid rising costs and sponsorship uncertainty. We'll have the details just ahead. Oscar-winning actor Gene Hackman, his wife, and their dog have been found dead in their New Mexico home. More on this straight ahead. This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage. It is decision day for voters as Ontarians head to the polls. It's been an unusual campaign with candidates battling frigid temperatures while canvassing in the first winter election since 1981. PC leader Doug Ford called the snap $189 million election, saying that he needs a new mandate to deal with 4 years of U.S. President Donald Trump. The other 3 main party leaders say that this election was unnecessary because Ford already had a large majority government with well over a year left in its mandate. And our reporters are out in the field to bring you in-depth coverage of this rare winter election in Ontario. Right now, let's go live to CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. She's in the provincial riding of Mississauga East Cooksville, where Bonnie Crombie is battling to capture a seat. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's right, Bakari. I mean, this is going to be a big riding to watch. That's because, as you mentioned, Bonnie Crombie, the leader of the Liberal Party, who doesn't have a seat yet, is looking to secure one here tonight in Mississauga, East Cooksville. We're at a polling station, and there's been some people trickling in and out today. It looks as though it's been pretty constant. Obviously, the fear is that there maybe isn't the voter turnout that opposition parties might need to secure some votes. We saw the last election a historic low when it came to voter turnout. So that's something that we're going to be watching closely tonight. That's a really interesting element of this election. But yeah, this riding is going to be very interesting because, as I mentioned, Bonnie Crombie looking for that seat. She, of course, very well known to people in Mississauga, having served a number of terms as mayor here. She's quite well liked in this riding. So the Conservatives obviously needed someone strong to contend against Bonnie Crombie for this seat. And who they have picked is an interesting candidate as well. Sylvia Gualteri, she has worked within the PC party for a long time in organizing, in fundraising. She's also worked in investment for quite some time, too. She's also the mother-in-law of Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown, and she is the sister of Rudy Cozzetto, who is the former MPP for Mississauga Lakeshore. He is seeking re-election tonight as well. So her Tory roots really do go deep, and obviously the PCs felt that she had a good chance of defeating Bonnie Crombie in this riding. Also interesting to note that she was campaigning yesterday with PC leader Doug Ford here in Mississauga, East Cooksville, in the Polish community. And we know that Bonnie Crombie has been very vocal about her Polish roots and has really been trying to sway voters with that. So looking at that and where Doug Ford was yesterday with Gualteri might suggest that maybe they don't feel that this is a slam dunk for Gualteri. But it's going to be really interesting to see these two tonight and looking at the votes and see what happens here. Of course, in Mississauga, all 6 ridings were swept in the last election by the PCs. So Bonnie Crombie very much looking to secure a seat here and get herself a seat so she can go into the legislature, but also looking for official party status. That's another thread that we're going to be following tonight. Of course, the Liberals have not had official party status in the last 2 elections. They will need 12 seats to get that. So there's going to be a lot to watch and a lot to follow here tonight, Bakari, and we will be heading to Bonnie Crombie's, basically her watch party, which is going to be at the Mississauga Convention Centre tonight. We have reached out to the PC party to try to track down Sylvia Gualteri as well, figure out where she's going to be watching these votes come in. They have not responded to us, but we're going to be around this riding, really keeping you up to date in terms of what is happening here, and just so much to watch for tonight. Bakari?
Okay, reporting live in the riding of Mississauga, East Cookville, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. Thank you. And Ontario PC leader Doug Ford cast his ballot this morning. Ford and his wife, they walked into Westmount Junior School in Etobicoke. He stopped to speak with a group of kids and election volunteers before making his way into the gym.
I'm asking for your vote to have a strong mandate to outlive and outlast Donald Trump. I'm going to protect the people of Ontario. I'm going to protect your families, your jobs, your communities, and businesses. So
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman is at the Toronto Congress Centre. This is where PC leader Doug Ford will host an election night event. Beatrice.
Bakari, you might see behind me on the screen the slogan, Protect Ontario. That's what Doug Ford has said that this election is all about for him. That's why he called this snap election. And in fact, just yesterday, he was wearing a jersey, Canada on the front, on the back, Never 51. So he's really hammered home this kind of Captain Canada vision for himself or of himself. I want to bring in Larissa Waller. She's the founder of Henley Strategies, former director of communications for a premier when he became premier in 2018. How are you feeling tonight, Larissa?
I think Conservatives are feeling pretty good tonight, but there are some races we are watching. So we are hoping to make gains up in Northern Ontario. We're hoping to make gains down in Niagara, and we're watching the KW region. We're watching down in Windsor. We're watching Oshawa. So we don't take anything for granted. We work hard until the very last vote is cast. You really, you have to run like you're 5 points behind, right? And so the GOTV effort, which stands for Get Out the Vote, Conservatives are very good at that. They're very good at making sure that those people who during the election campaign said they were going to vote for us actually show up to vote.
Yeah, Get Out the Ground campaign is the most important on a day like today. Where would you say the PCs are really focusing their efforts? Because Doug Ford didn't actually spend that much time in Toronto proper. He went out to the 905, he went to the periphery. Why is that?
So in the 905, we're polling around 50%, and those seats matter because they tend to vote as a block. right? So how Mississauga, East Cooksville votes is often how Mississauga Streetsville will vote. So you really want to make sure that you're spending your time shoring up your support, that they show up. So we're looking at the Mississaugas, the Bramptons, up in Scarborough, into Durham region, to make sure that we sort of sweep that horseshoe around downtown Toronto.
You talk about Mississauga, East Cooksville. That's, of course, where Bonnie Crombie is hoping to win her seat to get into the legislature. The Premier's Doug Ford has spent quite a bit of time there, including just yesterday, Patrick Brown's mother-in-law running in that riding. How competitive is it from a PC perspective?
So from our perspective, it's very competitive, where it's, it feels about 50-50. It could go either way. So this is where that ground game really comes in. Yesterday, the Polish community held a rally in support of Doug Ford in Mississauga, and that's notable because, Bonnie Crombie is Polish. And so it's important for Conservatives there to say that, people who Bonnie Crombie would say take for granted or assume are supporting her are not supporting her, and they're going to support Doug Ford.
You worked for Doug Ford when he became Premier in 2018. Talk to me about the evolution of Doug Ford and what you've seen over the course of the last, 6-7 years now.
Yeah, so, Doug Ford has always had the biggest heart. He's always really cared about people. What I'd say I've seen as an evolution, I think really happened during COVID, where he became an expert at bringing people together from differing points of view. And, everybody's calling, right now with the tariffs, this Captain Canada moment. It really also came out during COVID, where he was on the phone every day with the other premiers. It didn't matter the political stripe. He was on the phone every day with governors from the states to make sure that everybody had what they needed, to make sure that Ontarians had the PPE, the ventilators, all the stuff we needed. And those relationships that he formed during COVID, I think, are what paying dividends right now when we're facing this existential tariff threat.
Is there any, or has there been any concern from your party, Larissa, that voters could punish Doug Ford and the PCs for calling this snap election when he still had a year and a half left in his majority mandate?
Yeah, so a few things on that. One, there's no evidence that there's any sort of punishment with the voters. Two, the last year of any mandate often is sort of a de facto election period, so we sort of just skip that. But the most important thing, and this is just true, he's asking the voters to give him the same 4 years that Donald Trump has. So they'll have virtually identical mandates through on the calendar, right? The same 4 years. And his whole point is that he's got to be here to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. Right now it's tariffs. We know that the new NAFTA is up for, not renegotiation, but they have to revisit it next year. So we're going to have that coming up, and you don't know what Donald Trump's going to do. And so Doug Ford's whole point is, elect me, make sure that you give me the 4-year mandate so that no matter what comes at us, you know that I'm going to have your back.
Marissa Waller, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Bakari, you talked about Doug Ford voting in his old elementary school this morning. Well, he'll be back here at the Toronto Congress Centre tonight. This is now going to be the third time he's kind of having his headquarters right here in the heart of Ford Nation in the great state of Etobicoke, as he likes to call it. And he'll be watching the results roll in from a hotel room nearby. Of course, we'll have live coverage here on CP24 all evening long. Back to you.
Live from the Toronto Congress Centre, CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Thank you. Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles held a rally at a campaign office on Danforth Avenue this morning as she was joined by Beaches East York NDP candidate Kate Dupuis, who's hoping to take the riding from Liberal incumbent Mary Margaret McMahon. And Stiles encouraged people to get out and vote.
We can do great things in the province of Ontario. And what I want for my kids, for all of our kids and grandkids, is an Ontario where we have hope for the future, not fear. So, folks, we know what we need to do today, right? We need to get everybody out to vote.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner cast his ballot at Guelph City Hall today. He was joined by his family, including his daughter, who was voting for the first time. Schreiner has been the MPP for Guelph since 2018 and was the first Green MPP elected in Ontario. And you still have a few more hours to cast your ballot as polls are set to close at 9 o'clock. And for more on this, let's go live to CP24's Arda Zakarian, who joins us from the newsroom. Arda.
Bakari, earlier today, I was at a polling station, Agincourt Recreation Center, and while the conditions aren't ideal, I mean, we are in the middle of winter, it was fairly easy to access the building. That's because the city has made it a priority to clear the roads and the sidewalks, not just at Agincourt Recreation Center, but around the city to make make it easy for people to go out and vote. And actually, the temperatures did rise a little bit above freezing, and the sun was shining. Some people told me that it's like a spring day, that it really wasn't that bad to go outside and vote. Of course, you have your own driveway, walkways to worry about as well. Those things can be tricky, but the determined ones went out and voted today. We spoke to a few of them.
Unfortunately, I really wasn't too happy with most of the candidates this time, but what are you going to do? Trying to pick the guy that's going to spend the less money? I don't know if there's anybody out there that'll do that.
Always important to vote. Yeah. I actually declined my ballot because I'm tired of picking from the worst, the best of the worst. So I would like to see more people decline their ballots so that we can get different leaders in that are in the parties.
And what was interesting was that woman wasn't the only one that declined their ballot and came and spoke with me. A couple of hours later, someone else came and she said to me, I just want to let you know that I also declined my ballot, that I don't believe that we should have an election now, so I'm going to decline it. So that was very interesting that we had two people in the short amount of time that I was there that spoke up like that. And having a winter election is very, very rare. The last time we went to the polls in the winter in Ontario was in 1981. So more than 4 years ago, and specifically in February, calling an election. Well, that hasn't happened for 142 years. So none of us were alive at that time, 1883. But we'll have yet to see how voter turnout is going to be, whether or not the conditions outside did affect voter turnout, that is. So back in the spring of 2022 is when we had our last Ontario election, and we had pretty low voter turnout, 43.5%, which is actually a record low. So we'll have to see what the future holds, and we'll find out shortly how we did. Back to you.
All right, reporting live from the newsroom, CP24's Arda Zakarian. Thanks a lot. An analyst research poll released last night for CTV News and CP24 shows the Ontario PCs continue to maintain their lead over the Liberals. The Progressive Conservatives have 47.8% support, while the Liberals dropped nearly 3% to 26.2%. The Ontario NDP is next with 15.4%, and the Green Party has 6.4% support. Nearly 9% of voters polled were undecided as of yesterday. And when it comes to which leader they want to be premier, just over 44% said Doug Ford. Just over 22% chose Bonnie Crombie, and 14.1% picked Mart Sowles. Mike Schreiner has nearly 8% support. It's 5:43, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5. And coming up, police are searching for a man after a series of break-ins at a retirement building in Newmarket. And police are searching for a man accused of 6 break-in-enters in a Newmarket retirement home. 26-year-old Dhruvan Radadia is accused of disguising himself as a personal support worker to break into a retirement residence. This is in the area of Davis Drive and Roxborough Road and Newmarket. So York Regional Police say that the suspect ran away after being confronted by staff and dropped a gold watch that he took from a resident's room. So Radadia is currently on bail for similar offenses and was not to be within 50 meters of any retirement home in Ontario. And for more on this, let's bring in CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan. Okay, so Steve, police are looking for this man. Let's get his photo back up on the screen. Talk about this man that they're looking for, 26-year-old Dhruvan Radadia.
So they're not looking for a person to identify who this man is. They know who he is. They're looking to locate him to arrest him. So anybody who sees this photo, it doesn't matter what he's wearing, they'll recognize his face as somebody they know or they don't know. Because there's an arrest warrant out for his arrest, once the police locate him, they will arrest him and put him before the courts again for the second time, charging him with a variety or a series of break-and-enters into a senior's home.
Okay, so let's go over this, what his MO was.
So the MO is quite simple. He presents himself as a PSW and then gains access to the floors where people have their rooms, vulnerable people, seniors who rely on others for their care. And he steals from them. That's his MO. He had been arrested in the past for these similar offenses, alleged offenses. And I say that because he was on an undertaking. And that undertaking included that he not be near a senior's home. That only gets put on an undertaking if you are charged with the crimes at a senior's home. And clearly he's not abided by those conditions because there are new allegations now that he's gone into more seniors' homes.
And it was the staff that actually ran him off.
And it was staff that, yeah, they suspected something was not right, and then there was a pursuit, a foot pursuit, if you will, and they were able to catch up to him. They didn't get him, and he dropped a watch. So that watch has been recovered, and now he's wanted for 6 counts of a break and enter.
But that's not always the best idea to confront someone.
Well, I always say you need to know the law. You need to know where your authority lies, and you need to know what your own training and experience is before you confront somebody. If you are capable and able, well, then you take your chances. And if you're not, you just make yourself the best witness you can be from a distance and call the police.
And so right now, the number that's alleged is 6.
6 new ones, yeah. And I don't know how many offenses he's been charged with prior, but enough that he's been on an undertaking now not to have any contact with a senior's home or to be within 50 meters of a senior's home. So that tells me that the offense that he's been arrested for in the past, that he still hasn't been tried for, have to deal with a nursing home.
And part of a recurring conversation, bail.
Again, bail. And this is what the police tell us time and time again, is that often when they arrest a suspect, that person has committed offenses in the past, and oftentimes the similar offenses to the ones that are being charged with presently.
Okay, so what's next?
Well, they're going to locate this guy, and it'll just be a matter of time before they do locate him. They'll put him before the courts, and the officer in charge, I can guarantee this, will suggest that he be detained, that a detention order be granted so that he not be released into the public again, because it's protection of the public. And currently he was given 1 chance. He blew that, a 2nd chance, and he's doing the same crimes again. So to stop him from doing that again to another senior's home, the Crown will most likely ask that he be detained until his trial.
All right, CP24's crime specialist, crime analyst, Steve Ron. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Bill.
Okay, let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Lisa Morales. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Bakari. And I do have some very welcome news. A very lengthy closure following a fatal rollover is no longer. Eastbound 407 has reopened from Leslie to Warden. All the on-ramps between Leslie and Woodbine also reopened as well. I have to say, a very busy track. East 401, basically from Dixie. And I'm going to take you right across the GTA. Look at Dufferin. Here's a look east of the DVP, Vic Park, even into Durham region, a very slow track as well. Don Valley Parkway, northbound. That's a slow one as well from approaching Don Mills all the way up to the 401. Checking in on the QEW Niagara bound, there was a problem past Appleby line. It was in the HOV lane that has since cleared. A couple things off the major routes to share with you. Eastbound Finch still blocked at Bayview for a collision. Bayview and Comer, a collision as well. Send it back to you, Bakari.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
It's 5:50, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5. Coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump says that he intends to put 25% tariffs on imports from Canada starting next week. U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed today that the 25% tariffs against Canada will take effect next week as scheduled. And Trump continued his calls for Canada to improve its border security, saying drugs are coming into the U.S. at very high and unacceptable levels, with the majority of them being fentanyl. The U.S. president says, as a result, the proposed tariffs on most Canadian goods will take effect March 4th. China will also be charged an additional 10% tariff on that date. A second tariff date remains on track to begin April 2nd.
Because they should be apprehending much more. They're only apprehending 1%. You're right about that. It's a little more than that. But they should be apprehending much more because a lot comes through Canada. And as Mexico gets stronger in terms of the border, it goes up to Canada, and a lot of drugs are coming in through Canada. We can't have that.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau provided an update on Canada's response to Donald Trump's tariff threats. This was during a news conference in Montreal today.
This is an issue that we should be working together on, and that Canada is not the source of problems for the United States. We will continue to do that work and do everything necessary to avoid these tariffs coming in. But like I said, if on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
It's 5:55, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5. Well, Katy Perry is set to become the first pop star to travel to space as part of an all-female mission. Details just ahead. NASA's on a mission to look for water on the moon.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff. Go, Falcon, go.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying a satellite and lunar lander took off this morning from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The satellite will keep a lookout from above while the lunar lander will work from its surface in search of possible water or ice deposits. Finding water is crucial for the Artemis mission, which aims to put astronauts on the moon for long-term stays. The rocket is expected to touch down next Thursday. Well, pop star Katy Perry is set to shoot across the sky this spring. She's part of a 6-member, all-female crew on Blue Origin's next spaceflight. According to the company, Blue Origin began launching wealthy tourists and celebrities into space in 2021. Flights typically last just 10 or 11 minutes from liftoff to landing, with passengers experiencing a few minutes of microgravity. The flight's expected to launch sometime in the spring. Right now it's 5:58, 3 degrees. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Ontarians are heading to the polls to decide who will lead the province for the next 4 years amid an unprecedented time in politics. And we'll have special election coverage, including a focus on key ridings and analysis, starting at 7 o'clock. Right now, thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.